2023 was a colossal year for video games. It didn't matter what system you owned, you were getting slapped around the face with a big wet blockbuster what felt like every single week. In 2024 we're already eating well again, but the best is still very much to come. Stay tuned for 10 games, indies and AAA titles that could potentially get you fired or divorced for playing too long. And you won't even notice.
Let's try this out.
Let's start right at the top. I'm trying not to get too carried away, but Star Wars Outlaws has the potential to be so big you won't be able to get it through the door even if you turn it sideways. A single-player open-world game in which you basically play a female version of Han Solo, set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, with no live service element and no intrusive microtransactions to speak of. Yes please. There is time for the monetization policy to change, of course, and I will be surprised if we're not invited to buy a new digital hat for $20 at some point, but for now I want to be optimistic. So what do we know about the developer? Massive Entertainment are a Swedish studio that have been around for a quarter of a century now, an achievement in itself, announcing themselves to the world with the critically acclaimed strategy game Ground Control on PC in 2000. Ubisoft acquired them in 2008, and since then they've been tasked with the development of a pretty strong line of hits, including Assassin's Creed Revelations, Far Cry 3, the Division series, and most recently the slightly divisive Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. This is a team used to building open worlds, and at the very least they know how to make these open worlds look good and feel good to play. Now that they don't have to worry about the live service element, can they make what promises to be several planets interesting to explore without falling into the Ubisoft trap of cluttering a map with neon icons, only to find that every mission is a benign fetch quest about as exciting as a bowl of soggy own brand cornflakes? Let us pray to Yoda for some intelligent questing. In truth, the biggest problem we might have at this stage is that the game gets delayed into 2025. There seems to be absolute determination that that won't happen from what I'm hearing and reading, and the game is thought to have been in development since 2019. But would we be surprised? Either way, we shouldn't see anything like the delay that Skull and Bones suffered. I honestly thought we'd see the Titanic finally arrive in New York before that game saw the light of day.
No petit Troy.
What?
Be careful. Donka's a broker, not a friend. She can't be trusted.
Who can out here? See you back at the ship.
Let's turn to something that definitely does have a release date. In fact, it may already be out by the time you're watching this. I am absolutely delighted to say that Contra is back, big time. Finally, it seems as though Konami have successfully married the old school run and gun formula with a fresh look, tight controls and excellent varied level design. It completely erases the sour taste of the previous entry, Rogue Corps, which was a horribly misguided twin stick affair that an unlucky few had the misfortune to step in at the end of 2019. There was clearly a meeting at Konami Towers after that game where someone got fired so hard they probably needed 2 jobs thereafter just to be unemployed. Whatever was said in that fraught exchange in Tokyo, it's brought about arguably the best Contra for 3 decades. 4-player co-op chaos, giant bosses and clever character perks make this one to play again and again for retro shooter fans. There's a demo available for pretty much every system at the time of recording, so if you haven't taken a look yet, then please do so.
I wasn't expecting that.
The Keeper of the New West. Welcome, the Destined One.
Moving from Japan across the East China Sea, we've potentially got something really big here. Looking like a cross between God of War and Dark Souls, Black Myth: Wukong is the first major international release from Game Science, one of several Chinese studios looking to break the wider games market in 2024, hot off the incredible Sino success of Genshin Impact. Based on the wildly popular 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West, which traditionally sees the hero travel from China to India and back again, No one seems quite sure yet how the adapted story will work here. But the great news is at this stage, wherever we are geographically, is that the game is weird. In the best possible way. Effectively playing as a bipedal ninja chimp, it looks like we'll be fighting tiger people, giant bloated worms, lampshade head, and even hitching a ride on Falcor the love dragon from the never-ending story. I may have made that last bit up. It really does look like a fully next-gen experience, the kind of thing we've been crying out for ever since the PS5 and Series X launched. I just hope the game will be localised properly, or at least offer reliable subtitles for the Chinese voice acting, so the immersion is maintained throughout the story. People often ask me, Adam, why is it that we never get to play as a young nun in an alternative version of 19th century Russia, exploring oppression by the Orthodox Church with the devil himself as our companion? And that's a good question, to which developer Oddmeter has come up with an answer. Joking aside, Indika has the potential to be one of the year's most notable games for a variety of reasons. The themes explored in the game are already contentious in modern Russia, home to the development team, but couple that with most of the team's vocal opposition to the war in Ukraine, and there's the potential for jail sentences of up to 20 years. As such, 10 of the team have since fled the country with the expectation that they might never return. Political tensions aside, Indika is looking like something truly original and engaging. It's essentially a third-person adventure game, mixing environmental puzzles with some light platforming, all wrapped in an art style that wouldn't look out of place at a specialist film festival. Amongst other abilities, you'll apparently be able to upgrade your stats for humility and guilt, however that works, while the graphics, tone and the characters' questioning nature are evocative of games like Hellblade. Indika looks pleasingly adult, and I'll certainly be happy to whip out my wimple at some point in the second quarter of this year.
Oh, so where now? Huh? So many options.
If all these dark and serious themes are getting a bit much, then allow me to stuff some bright, brash arcade fun into your eyeballs. New Star GP has been in early access for several months, where it's been received positively, and it now has its official release date in March 2024. The game asks the long overdue question of Formula 1. What if no one gave a shit about the rules? The racing here harks back to the arcades of the mid-90s and reminded me of 2020's Hotshot Racing, which I featured in one of my videos for 5 underrated arcade races quite recently. There's a lot more game here than we might have expected, however. Starting in the 1980s, the main campaign will ask you to guide your very own fully customizable motorsport team through the decades all the way up to today, upgrading your era-specific car, formulating pit strategies, battling the weather and choosing beards. There are 17 tracks from around the world and we'll be able to play in local 2, 3 or 4 player split screen. I'm looking forward to smashing millions of pounds worth of carbon fibre into a wall. As a young video gamer in the 80s and 90s, it would occasionally be suggested to me by uncharitable types at school or in the adult world that I was an agoraphobic nerd with the personal hygiene of a chronically depressed bacteria. Clearly those people had never met the Warhammer players. Of course, these days we live in more enlightened times, and even sweaty old Warhammer has come out into the light thanks in no small part to ex-Superman Henry Cavill, who was and is a player. Nerd! I wonder if he played a few games with Tom Cruise on the set of Mission Impossible 17 or whatever number it was, moving his little marines around to capture a group of badly painted Scientologists backed by their Lord Zarg. We can only speculate. Whether you're an avid Warhammer fan or you can't tell your orc from your elbow, there is a universal truth that cutting monsters to bits with chainsaw guns is brilliant. Gears of War proved the formula way back on the Xbox 360, and with today's graphics and the promise of a 3-player cooperative campaign, Space Marine 2 is promising to take the torch and burn it brighter than ever. The scale on offer here is incredible. It really looks like full-scale war with environments and enemies dazzling with detail. Of course, many modern games get demoed on high-end PCs that are spec'd to launch nuclear weapons and cost twice as much. But as one of several new-gen only games on this top 10 list, I'm hopeful that Space Marine 2 will become an example of what the PS5 and Series X can really do and make us horny long time. Toxic Crusaders is a remake of the 1992 Mega Drive/Genesis, NES and Game Boy games, which were themselves loosely based on the 1984 black splatter comedy Toxic Avenger. The story goes that mild-mannered caretaker Melvin accidentally falls into a vat of toxic waste, transforming into someone who looks like the bloke who gets run over in RoboCop, but with a mop and a thirst for environmental justice. What follows is generally more violent than Captain Planet ever was, and it's perfect fodder for an over-the-top brawler. I'm hoping to see a few tweaks to the usual button-mashing formula because the look, and the excellent soundtrack, deserve some solid mechanics and the market is increasingly competitive. I'm all for a strong environmental message in a game, but we don't want to recycle the same old gameplay, eh? Eh? I'll suit yourself.
Come on, Crusaders! It's cleanup time!
Now then, here's something we weren't expecting. First announced as a Kickstarter project nearly 9 years ago, it was assumed until very recently that Little Devil Inside had done a Star Wars 1313 and become a Force Ghost, or whatever it is that indies do when they die. Out of nowhere has arrived this lengthy, if somewhat disjointed trailer to proclaim that the project is in fact very much alive and could release, we assume, by the end of 2024. Please do not put any significant money on that being a certainty, but clearly what we have in this video is a game with a lot of its mechanics in place and showing a lot of promise. I love the model village style look and the flashes of humour. The game can be played solo or in a cooperative team, we're not sure how many people in total as yet, and it's said to feature basic survival mechanics, crafting, upgrading weapons and transport, all with the ultimate goal of compiling an encyclopedia of all phenomenal existence. Developer Neostream are just 6 people based in Seoul, and you can just imagine how painstaking this project has been and see how much love they're pouring into the project. Here's hoping that the final product stands up on release and that the last decade has been worth it. If you choose to ignore the incredibly poor Sonic Forces from 2017, and I will, the world's most unlikely coloured hedge dweller has been on a hot streak in recent years. I really enjoyed Generations first time around. Not only did it showcase brand new levels with proper original Sonic, but some of the intertwining 3D stages could be thrilling, which was a first for me. It wasn't perfect though. The idea that you could upgrade certain abilities like running faster or hopping on a skateboard at random seemed like a great idea on paper, but none of the levels really utilised the new skills to their potential. The platforming movement and momentum also needed some slight tweaks across the 2D and 3D planes in the original game, so if Sonic Team can iron that out and provide some new stages and abilities along with a solid frame rate, and it looks like they might, then we could be on for one of the surprise hits of 2024.
I own an island off the coast of Costa Rica. Really spectacular, spared no expense. For this place, I wanted to show them something that wasn't an illusion. Something that was real.
And finally for this list today, we have what could be the game we've all been waiting for since 1993. We're going through quite a strong period for licensed video games. It seems that fans of the films from the 80s and 90s have grown up to become developers, making worthwhile games based on the RoboCop, Terminator and Spider-Man franchises, to name just a few examples. But how we've got to 2024 with so few dinosaurs in our games is surely a source of industry shame. The recent Jurassic Park Evolution games are decent enough, but they're not the visceral thrill ride that the best scenes in the films are. Jurassic Park Survival clearly wants to correct this, and for my money it's starting at exactly the right point. Playing as Dr. Maya Joshi, it's the day after the final scenes of the original film, and you have been left behind on the island with old Rexian friends running rampant. It's the perfect elevator pitch for a video game, and the first-person perspective should help to lend a sense of immersion and scale as you're pursued through the jungle and abandoned buildings, trying to find a way off the island. If the developer can create enough variety in the ways to engage and distract the dinosaurs, and avoid the kind of tedious pull this lever, turn the generator on missions every few minutes, then, as Sir David Attenborough would say, Jurassic Park Survival could be the absolute brachiosaur's bollocks. So, which games have you got your eye on this year? We're by no means done with our look at 2024, and I'll be back with another list of great upcoming games very soon, along with more news, reviews and retro goodness. You're in the right place for all things video games, so do please leave a like, a comment and ding that notification thing. See you soon!